Hey guys, welcome back. Rally Turkey just finished earlier today, and that was one hell of an event. I'll talk about that a little bit later, probably sometime next week. But what I'm going to talk about right now is the silly season. Now, I talked about F1 silly season earlier this weekend, and WRC's got one of its own. They still got 9 drivers not to be confirmed, potentially even more. But on top of that, there are only 3 rounds left, and 9 drivers makes up about 3/4 of the drives. So far we've already known that Tanak and Mickelson are going to be staying with their respective teams. They signed multi-year contracts at the end of last season. So we've got one Toyota and one Hyundai already confirmed. And then going into this weekend, Thierry Neuville signed another 3-year extension, I think it was, with Hyundai to see him through to 2021. So that means we've got one Hyundai left, possibly more, 2 Toyotas, 3 M Sports and 3 Citroens, and potentially some other privateers. What I'm going to do is talk about specific drivers, because if I talk about specific teams, I'm going to be probably closing off teams and then reopening them again and again and again. So let's start off with Jari-Matti Latvala, because he said over the course of the weekend to people that he is going to be confirming his future in the WRC before GP. That he's going to be returning next year and in a car with a massive rear wing. Now, that suggests he's going to be staying at Toyota, and that would be a sound move for him. Solid team, solid car, and one where he's got an excellent working dynamic. He could go back to Ford though, which would be a surprise. It likely depends on what happens with Ogier as to whether he goes to Ford. Could potentially go to Citroen or Hyundai, but I think that's unlikely. I think if he was to leave Toyota, it would probably be for Ford. As for his Toyota teammate Lappi, he's tied with a move to Citroen potentially. And I could see him doing that. Or I could see him staying with Toyota. And next I'm going to move on to Ford drivers at the moment. I'm going to talk about Ogier first, because Ogier has been linked to so many different drives. Well, since Volkswagen left the sport, that is. The only one that really hasn't said anything about him is Hyundai. Going into 2017, they'd already confirmed 4 drivers, so like, well, we're not going to say that we're interested in Ogier. Of course, he was then a 4-time world champion. I can't say that we're not. But we've already got a full team. He tested the Toyota, he tested the Ford, and I believe he wanted to test the Citroen. They said, not unless you sign for us. I might be remembering that wrong though. Then he decided to sign for Ford. He could potentially return to Citroen. I don't see him doing the switch to Toyota necessarily. But then he could pull a surprise and do that. Be reunited with Tanak again. I reckon he's probably going back to Citroen, which would mean there'd be an empty seat at Ford. If Citroen were to say poach Lappi as well, that would leave Osberg without a seat, so Osberg could go back to Ford, or potentially Latvala could go from Toyota to Ford. And Osberg could go back to Ford and take up one of the other seats, or go to Toyota. As for Evans, I reckon they'd keep him. And this is where I think there's only one seat up for grabs at Ford. Someone did so much to impress Ford at the start of the season that he's basically been committed to the whole season with them. So I reckon he's going to be there next year. And Evans could do well as the first driver, though he can also be a solid second driver should they want to get someone like an Ogier or potentially a Latvala to replace an Ogier should Seb choose to leave. On the other hand, if Osberg's left without a drive, I believe he still owns that Fiesta, and Ford would upgrade it for him. So it could go back to being a privateer. I don't know if he would particularly want to be doing that. As for Citroën, well, their other current driver is Craig Breen, and he's not really linked with a move away. If he was, I'd probably say be to Ford, because he has raced Fords before, but I reckon he's going to stay put at Citroën. He's shown potential. He's had so much bad luck this season, but when he's been on it, he's been on it. And then we have a couple of Hyundai drivers I haven't talked about, Sordo and Padden. I'd be surprised if Padden left Hyundai. If he did, I'd say potentially he'd get a drive at M Sport. But then he doesn't really have many ties to anywhere else in the service park. Sordo has ties to Citroën, so he could go back there. I believe he also wants to do a rally for M Sport, so he could go there. But I reckon if either of them are going to leave, it's because they're looking for a full-time programme elsewhere. Hyundai could easily keep both of them, but Bichon and Dunn's gone, well, if they're going to go for a full-time drive somewhere else, I wouldn't blame them. So I think he's trying to thin it down to just one of them, but only by means of going, well, the other one chooses to leave. And then we've got a couple of wild cards. So, of course, we only have 11 cars in the championship at the moment. What I've been talking about with Citroën could potentially be an expansion to 3 cars, Lappi, Breen and Ogier. But there's still a couple of other people on the outside. You've got people like Kalle Rothenberger who tested for Toyota. So if there's an opening at Toyota, he could potentially fill that. Rothenberger family has good links to the Mackinnons, and he's a solid talent, and it would be massive PR opportunity to go, well, we've got an 18-year-old in our car, given that most drivers that we talk about as young drivers tend to be in their mid to late 20s. On top of that, there's also Chris Meek, because, he hasn't been driving half the season. Though I reckon if he wasn't to return to Citroën, the other place he could go is Hyundai. Because across the service park, very few drivers have been talking about Chris, or very few teams even. But the people who have been talking about him in particular have been people at Hyundai. So I wouldn't be surprised to see him in an I-20. On top of that, there's still more chances for privateer entries. M Sport have got a couple of Fiesta chassis lying around. Citroën have got a couple out with PH Sport. I don't think Hyundai and Toyota are likely to do anything with that because they haven't particularly shown a want to do privateer cars before. But they might run a 4th car for one-offs. I really wanted to see that happen with Toyota and LTR this season, but it's a shame it didn't. But it did nearly happen for Toyota with Marcus Gronholm, and there's rumours that Gronholm might make a return for Rally Sweden next year, which would be epic. Right now, the problem is with WRC, it's a similar problem to F1. We have too many great drivers. Mind you, unlike in F1 where you go, oh, that person's a pay driver, they can go. WRC, they're all excellent drivers, they've got great talents and they're here for a while. So we need more cars. It would be awesome to have more manufacturers, but we need more cars in the championship. Anyways, that's what I think. I think it's likely going to be Ogier, Lappi, Breen and Citroën. I reckon Ford would then likely poach Ostberg. Then I reckon it would be either Meek and Hyundai or they keep Patton and Sordo. for Toyota, Ladfiller and Rothenpera. Of course, with M Sport, there's a chance that someone like Patton Zolo could go into the works team, then Osberg continues to privateer. But now I don't really know at this point. It's all still up in the air. I'll probably comment on it again when all of the contracts have been finalised. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you had some fun watching it, or want to start a debate. If you do, just leave something in the comments down below. Thank you so much for watching. Hope to see you again soon. Bye bye.